Welcome, friends, in and of an awakening world. And the sutra that I want to talk about today talks about one of the niyamas, santosha, which is contentment. But actually, more explicitly, it talks about what this happiness or this bliss that so many people actually hope to get to, and that we hear a lot about in the texts, but also in association with the self. That there is this absolute bliss, and many people from their mind then wonder how what is this bliss gonna be like. And it can also be a great motivation, actually, for someone to come into touch with this bliss. And what he says in the sutra is that this happiness or this bliss that is bestowed on you, that you are gaining by coming into touch with your true self, that this is incomparable contentment. That this is a contentment. And this is such a nice sutra because it is exactly that. What you're coming into touch with as you discover yourself as awareness, as that which isn't bound to the contents of the mind, and which is also still by itself, uncaused, this uncaused stillness. How this is experienced at first is this total peace. And this peace doesn't come from anything, actually. It is already what you are. This peace is already what you are. But it is also coming into touch with that in you that isn't a thought and that doesn't need thoughts. And that can also exist independent of thought and when there are no thoughts. And this stillness fast is experienced as this great peace. A peace that you have never tasted before. It isn't comparable to anything, actually. It isn't comparable to those moments when you were really, really quiet. It isn't comparable to any stillness that you have experienced when you were suddenly feeling very, like just quiet. It is this quiet that is already there. It is coming into touch with that higher presence of yours, with that unlimited essence of yours. And how this is experienced is a peace that needs nothing. It's just what expands from itself, from coming into touch with it. It's just this complete peace. And what comes more and more to the foreground is this contentment. And this contentment, he also says so nicely, incomparable contentment. Because again, when we usually, as we live this life, we know what is contentment. We feel content about our day. We feel content about what we have done. We feel content about, when you have achieved something. We know all these kinds of contentment that are object focused or that are focused on having done something or within this ephemeral world. But there is this contentment that comes from coming to know your true self. It is uncaused. It needs no more cause. And the more you abide as awareness, the more you come into touch with what you actually essentially are, the more this contentment actually spills into your life and is then experienced consistently, independent of what happens. So it's very, very different because then it's no longer bound to. Usually, our contentment is bound to. If something happens in our life that is great, we are content. If something happens in our life that isn't great, we are discontent. And if we are very, very honest, usually this kind of discontentment that is connected to the identification with the small self is somehow always present. Somehow always you are not enough. Somehow always your environment is not enough. Somehow always your situation is not enough. So coming into touch with what is inherently happy, what is inherently at peace, what is inherently content is something completely different. You come into touch with something that needs nothing to be content, that just is content on its own. And the more you come to know yourself as this awareness, the more this is actually allowed, not just to be in the background of your experience continuously, that you feel there is something, something deeper there, but to actually spill over, spill into your experience, spill into your life. And this cannot come by you just thinking about it. You need to sit down and actually witness. You need to detach from thought. You need to connect to what in you is simply aware. And then there is some sort of automatism, some sort of mechanism that this is suddenly you're placing your attention consistently on it. By this attention of yours, being on it, you becoming aware of awareness, you abiding as awareness, this is allowed to come stronger to the foreground of your experience. And what this then does is infuse your life with contentment. And this is incomparable and inexplainable to someone who has never actually come into touch with it. It is that you are content with life as it is. And someone who is aware of awareness, then suddenly everything is beautiful. This is this, and again, it isn't that you are trying really hard. It is that you are cooking and you are content by just cooking. There isn't a questioning or there isn't a discontentment. It is just this beautiful activity suddenly. And if something isn't working, I don't know, in your job, in your home, this is also suddenly infused by contentment. You can have emotions suddenly, you are angry or, frustrated, but this contentment, even about being angry or discontentment about whatever arises, is predominant. It starts to outshine the awareness, and with it, the happiness, the contentment starts to outshine whatever it is that is in your experience. Why? Because what you truly are, outshines whatever is in your experience, in the contents of your mind. As you practice this, like coming to know yourself, this outshining that becomes part of your knowing also outshines experience. It happens simultaneously as you come to know what you essentially are. And he says there is an incomparable contentment that is bestowed on you, that comes from this happiness, from coming into touch with your essential nature as awareness, from coming into touch with your true self. And again, this bliss, yeah, this total happiness that's so often prescribed. It can be that it is, there is some outburst, but more importantly, it is exactly as he says, it is this incomparable contentment, like a quiet, beautiful contentment that infuses your days, and where it's no longer about you are having to achieve something to be content. It's a massive gain, when it's no longer stipulated on what you do or don't do, but when everything is infused by this contentment. You're content watering your plants. You're content feeding your pet. You're content cooking. You're content if something doesn't work and you have to fix it. There's a contentment with having to fix something. There's a contentment underlying even what we call negative emotions. There's a continuous contentment that starts to spill over and infuse everything. And so this bliss is this. And it comes automatically because it is what you are. So the more you come to know what you actually essentially are, the more this will automatically infuse your days. There is, again, there is no willing. There is no small self that needs to be content, even though you can also witness, one of the niyamas, like observation, observances, what you can also do in meditation, but what you can also do throughout your days is how much discontentment with the present moment is here. And just notice, again, don't judge, just notice these kind of thoughts and start to disidentify from these kind of thoughts that somehow stipulate that something isn't already great. Something, like happiness has to be found in the present moment, because it is what you essentially are. And the present moment can open you to this happiness as you're not pushing that happiness away by thinking of your past or projecting something into the future. It's already what is here right now. So this contentment is a big, he says, it will be bestowed on you. It's a big chunk of what opens itself to you as you come to know again what you are, as you abide more consistently in awareness, as you come into touch with your true nature and not just with the small self. It comes stronger and stronger to the foreground. It's such a beautiful effect of coming to know yourself, is to be content with everything, with little mundane, whatever is in your day is suddenly exciting. Even it might not feel or seem exciting to someone that is very identified, but doesn't matter, because you are completely content with your days as they are, because they are so infused by this happiness. They're so infused by this contentment of your true nature, this contentment of what you actually already are. And then suddenly everything is exciting. Everything is beautiful. Everything is a great thing happening in your day. So that's the sutra that says there's an incomparable contentment Incomparable also because it cannot be compared to the usual ways of how we have experienced contentment in the past, always object focused, always dependent on something, always causal. This is non-causal. Well, a little bit causal because it comes from you knowing what you actually are, but it has no reason. It is happiness on its own accord. It is contentment on its own accord. It is what you already are. Namaste. Thank you so much for your presence here.